from various quarters of the Russian Empire and throughout Europe. And so this was kind of a laborious task, and it was very controversial. And it was a lot of like networking and coordinating and letter writing, and they were writing in code for fear of being arrested, and they were writing all over Europe and all over Russia, trying to decide who, you know, which revolutionary groups are going to be allowed to send delegates. And remember, there's a lot of factions at this time, and the old agrarian socialist tendency in Russia that was very prominent in the 1860s, 1870s, 1880s is slowly fading out of popularity as Marxist numbers are growing. And some of the major points of discontent between the two groups the agrarian socialists seem to have an affinity towards the peasants. The Marxists seem to, these are blanket statements, there's disagreements even in these two camps, but generally the Marxists believe that industrial working classes will have to lead the revolution. And then also there's the issue of violence. And the agrarian socialists are known for successful and unsuccessful assassinations of various leaders, high-profile bombings, and a lot of times they're unsuccessful, but sometimes they do succeed at their aims. And many of the Marxists feel like these covert violent actions will be counterproductive, and that they need to organize as a large class, set up a party, and organize that way. And so there's kind of disputes about this. Lenin obviously considers himself an orthodox Marxist, but he has a lot of respect for a lot of the agrarian socialists and for their tactics of terror. And I'll get into that later as well. That becomes a source of controversy throughout his career. Critics use that against him. Sometimes he tones that down, and sometimes he whips that up in his speech. But he seems to have a deep respect for those so-called terrorists. Let me see here. So we've got the first party, the second Congress. So as the second Congress meets, there's a Jewish fund, and they may be the largest revolutionary faction in the empire. And they feel like their numbers are not represented at the Congress. There's also a Geneva newspaper, The Workers' Cause, which feels like the working class is not being given enough of a leadership role in the Second Congress. And so as the Second Congress convenes, there's walkouts, there's almost a fist fight. Lenin has to pull someone aside and say that fist fighting is for people who can't make well-formed arguments. And also, in leading up to this Second Party Congress, Lenin and Plekhanov are trying to, well, they're trying to have as much influence as possible on the delegates that are chosen at the Second Party Congress. When the Second Party Congress convenes, Lenin is actually censored for this by the Congress. Plekhanov is not, because he's kind of seen as this this figure beyond reproach. Actually, there's a motion to censor Lenin, and actually it almost passes and doesn't pass, so he's not actually censored. And so I thought this might be an interesting point of departure for us, is we're a non-tendency group, and I think well, and Greg's made, what would you call that? Like an outline for, or a call for?
For the new party? A draft resolution is actually.
Yeah. And so we're a non-tendency party here, and there were a lot of mixed emotions at this Second Party Congress, and a lot of people felt like, well, Lenin and Plekhanov did all the work to arrange this. So of course, when the Congress begins, they're going to dominate the Congress. They're going to have a draft party program already written up, to which people can vote on. And they've worked to try and nominate the delegates that they want to come to this event. And so on the one hand, a lot of people feel like, well, they did a lot of the work. Of course, this is kind of a natural conclusion. Others, like I said, there were walkouts, and some people felt like it wasn't democratic enough from the get-go. And so Lenin is almost censured. And then I want to take a minute here and kind of talk about the angle I'm going to take on Lenin. I want to resituate the debate on Lenin through this presentation. I think that tying in with the comments on historiography that I opened with, in my opinion, Lenin, as he's forming the party, is really kind of no more or no less guilty of politicking in the way that many of our American beloved political leaders are, from Kennedy to FDR to Lincoln. Yet I think in the historiography, he's kind of presented as this very selfish, manipulative person that, what it seemed to be like over and over again, he kind of does what is really standard for politics at the time. And this could be a point of departure, again, for a conversation of, in 2010, what kind of politicking do we ascribe to now? But as far as Lenin in 1900 and 1917, there weren't any moments in his forming of the party where I felt like he was, like I said, any more or less guilty than what is generally ascribed to be the business of politicking. So, excuse me. For instance, just to give you one aside, he has a lot of his family. His family is extremely supportive of him and of his cause, and he has a lot of his family members as delegates or as positions around him. And Service takes him to task for this. And I remember thinking at the time, it sounded to me like a lot like the Kennedy administration, actually. And I wondered if Service would take the Kennedy administration to task for the same tactics of surrounding yourself with people that you felt like you could work with cooperatively and productively, and that you felt like were smart and loyal and shared your views on politics. And it seems to me that Lenin is really never guilty of more than that in forming the party. The Second Party Congress, I think I said this already, meets in Brussels, 1903. They immediately had to move to London, though, when they encountered trouble from the law. They meet 5 days later in London in a chapel run by a socialist reverend, and Lenin apparently has to, quote, conquer his distaste for meeting in a church building. And this is something that Lenin will struggle with throughout his life. He later meets I'm not going to find this one. He later meets a revolutionary priest that he admires very much and writes about him. But at times he has a hard time curtailing his disgust for the merging of religion or faith and socialism. And personally, I can sympathize with that. But he constantly works on that, and he wants to reevaluate that, and he wants to try and make that a principled stand rather than just a kind of a petty stand. At the Second Party Congress, Plekhanov, at the time that Lenin was about to be censured, Plekhanov is requested by party delegates to denounce Lenin and to renounce Lenin. And behind the scenes, not a lot of people know this at the time, but Plekhanov and Lenin have been fighting a lot, and they have various disagreements. And Lenin comes to Plekhanov and tells him that Lenin has a case of what they called nerves at the time throughout his life, and suffers several, what we would call today probably, breakdowns. And he goes to Plekhanov and he says, this is killing me. Like, we keep fighting and I keep having these nervous breakdowns. and apparently Plekhanov was unsympathetic.